So that leads me to another question, which is, and I think this is where they do meet up. I do think the globalism and the nationalism debate is worth having, and a lot of the readings try to bring it together, even though it's difficult. Which one is more illiberal? And I think that that's where a lot of this conversation is going. So as our colleague just mentioned, on the nationalism side, it brings out those who don't like immigrants, those who don't like fellow citizens who are different from them, and they're also seen as people who believe in the nationalist agenda. They wave the flag. And then that's not helping us build a representative government. There are some real illiberal traits in the national side. On the globalism side, the illiberal traits include things I've already mentioned, such as transnational elites, some people in Belgium telling the Brits how much wattage your coffee pot can have, or your ironing materials, on and on and on. What is more illiberal? What's more consistent with pushing us to a representative free system is another core part of this debate. Does anyone want to respond to that one? Yes.
Well, I guess that nationalism is very important
And can I have your name?
Oh, sorry. Mark.
And from where?
Copenhagen, Denmark.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were, I didn't know, are we international?
Yeah, this is a global.
Oh, this is a global forum. Okay, all right. I thought we were just trying to save American students, but we're trying to save the world. That's okay. Okay. Sorry about that intervention. Go ahead.
You've got to be inclusive. But yeah, so I was thinking about your question. So nationalism is very important politically. Like in Denmark,
Yes.
it's very important to have the working class, and then it's very important for those 2% of people who still wear proper equipment and go to work and whatever. They're on the middle, and I guess it's the same in the States. A very important class of voters. So in politics, maybe nationalism is very important. So in that sense, on your question, it is a liberal force, a democratic force, very important to gain a majority, but it isn't a strong policy instrument. I get with the whole tariffs and whatever, but this seems like political signals that one seeks to send, and that the more policy guiding instrument. I don't know if globalization is the right term, but it is to continue after growth, that people experience improvements in their life and so forth. And there you have to follow some sort of economic rationalism or globalized path. So I guess that, I don't know if this is completely a illiberal dimension, but nationalism gets a lot of the attention in politics, but in reality it is more improving people's lives, which is completed through some sort of obeying to globalization.
I think I got what you were saying, and if I can kind of represent it, and then you correct me if I'm not saying it right. I think you're saying that nationalism, people get attached to it because it appears to result in economic policies that benefit their lives more so than.
That is very strong politically. Like the left, because it was in Denmark, for example, it was very scared of nationalism and anything that. So it didn't attach to that. So the right had the political power in a long time. So it's a very strong political instrument.
Even if it doesn't deliver on the economic policies that it claims to, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's good for campaigning, but not so important when administrating.
So let me give you a stateside example of what I think you're talking about. In Pittsburgh, we just had an election, and the Democrats have won the mayoral race for, I don't know, dozens and dozens and dozens of years. And that will happen again. But we had a very well-liked Democratic mayor who just lost in the primaries to someone who's far more progressive than he would ever be. And he was spending a lot of time in the capitals of Europe at the Davos World Economic Forum, which I failed to mention. I think these are enormously important organizations for the conversations on the sidelines that then go back and influence policy in the capitals around the world. And the far left, he got attacked on the far left, on labor, because he was seen more as a globalist in his orientation than what many people wanted. So I think that speaks to what you're trying to talk about. And we see a lot of it in Europe, frankly, not just the United States. I mean, Americans are consumed with ourselves, but there are pockets of it. You look in Hungary, the UK, around Europe as well. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, it was just Denmark, for example, with the EU. You also mentioned Britain and
Yeah.
exemptions to the EU. So like Denmark, we have like 4 things we don't want to do in the EU, which really don't matter a lot, but it's very important for people emotionally that we're like, oh, we're not completely a member of the EU. So this is just an example. In practice, you are very much in the world, integrated, but in language, you say, no, we respect Danish interest first. And this is just a very powerful political emotion.
So I have a couple responses to that. Is there someone else that wanted to speak? Oh, yes, 2 hands, 3, 4. Josh, see, it works. Okay.
Hello, my name's
Hi.
Amani.
And where are you from?
Chicago.
Okay.
I was really interested in this discussion of with regard to nationalism, like who's considered like a citizen, or how do those opinions form. And I think I would lean on the side of nationalism being a little bit more illiberal, only because I feel like it's a much tighter, more well-defined identity in a lot of regards. So if you don't agree with kind of the nationalist or like a commonly accepted opinion of like the rest of your fellow nationalists, then you could be seen as like a betrayer to your own kind. Whereas I feel like a globalism kind of setting, you'd be seen as somebody with like just a different opinion. I don't think that kind of like betrayal or like outcasting would happen in a similar way.
In a global, yes.
Yeah, just because the it's a little bit more like vague or ambiguous,
Yes.
whereas the definition, or like, I mean, we have borders, right? So
Right.
like to have nationalism is very clear and well defined, as opposed to like the globalism kind of identity.
Yeah, we took this on at Hoover right before the shutdown. I think it was in January or February of 2020. There was a big panel on citizenship, and I was on that, and it was chaired by or organized by Michael McConnell, Stanford law professor. I hope he's presenting at this event. And General Mattis was on the panel as well. And we were talking about citizenship. And it's actually a really hard problem because, we think citizenship, maybe we could say it's voting, that you vote, you participate in a society, in a community. But people have different ways they want to define themselves. But it's hard to do it really rigorously in a global context because you don't vote. We can't, get rid of the Taliban. We can't do a lot of the things that we'd like to do as citizens in a domestic society. But I think what you're saying is that domestic citizenship gets captured often, apart from the objective parts of voting, participating in the town square, and all of those issues. I think that's important. You may want to look back at the website that we had, or the video for that discussion, because it really went to the heart of what you're talking about. The young man next to you, and your name, please, and
Yes.
your place.
I'm Ken, I'm from Florida, and so my line of inquiry comes from a slightly opposite view, in the sense that obviously in order to have a liberal representative democracy, you have to have people commit to those ideas, and I feel as if that commitment is being lost along many lines. And so I wonder if nationalism is a way to entrench people in those ideas, given that the U.S. is becoming increasingly diverse and people come from all different backgrounds. So it's hard for us to really have that sense of cohesion from any other factor.
I think we've been thinking about this a lot, and I was thinking about it this morning getting ready for this meeting. Like, do we need to teach citizenship and civics, and will that have an impact? Because we don't actually teach it anymore. And I have, I started a program at Carnegie Mellon, and a lot of the students coming in as freshmen had taken AP History and Government, and they said, well, I don't need a course in U.S. government. And actually they did, because they learned how to pass a test, which is very different than having a deeper understanding about the three branches of government, the separate and overlapping authorities, the robust role of civil society in affecting each branch, and all of these dynamics in our history. And I wonder if some of getting back to the kind of what you're talking about, a common understanding of a nation of accelerating immigrants, is about trying to get a better common purpose. But even people who are, multi-generational Americans have a difficult understanding of who we are. And I think that's something at Hoover we'll probably think about. It seems a bit nationalist to say we're going to teach civics or citizenship. So I think that getting the vocabulary right will be part of it, because we don't want to look like we're indoctrinating people, but having a baseline understanding of what it means to live in any nation state, I think is something that we need to do with all deliberate speed. I think there were a couple hands in the back. Let's not go to the same person yet, if we have time at the end, but let's go to new people. Way in the back. Okay. And your name and university.
Hi, my name is Chasten. I actually am attending Carnegie Mellon right now.
Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't say anything too bad about the place. Okay.
But I'm originally from Florida. Okay. And my thought was just that I think that this is almost similar to rational self-interest in the case that nations tend to pursue globalization to the extent it's in their national interest. And to me, that's inherently nationalistic. Because if you're going to engage in the global economy just for your nation's interest, that's kind of in a similar vein as nationalism. So I think whenever it comes to the questions of which is more illiberal, I think it's having a national focus with a global awareness is almost like the best sort of balance to have. Because if you take it too far away from the nation, then it's illiberal in the sense that the country's not able to determine what's best for itself. Okay. But then if you, in the case of the U.S., sometimes during the Cold War, you see things like where we intervened in some Latin American countries in a way that was distinctly illiberal. So maybe a case of going too far to the other direction. So that's kind of my line of thought.
So I think one way that I could put what I think you're trying to say is a concept that's being attributed to President Biden. Maybe he's even said it himself. The idea of being a global patriot. And I think that's what you're trying to say here, is that you have to have some state-bound interests that govern what you do in order to even be a responsible actor on the world stage, and so that you can't not have self-interest as a guiding force. I'm going to turn back in a moment to talk on the Trump doctrine and America First on the principle that you just articulated, but I want to hear from the others who've put their hands up. And who's next? Yes. Then yeah. Are we? Oh, okay.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Phil. I'm roughly speaking from Switzerland, so European faction here. And I want to use Switzerland actually as an example to talk about sort of globalism and nationalism, because I think it works relatively well because it's a country that's very small and has 4 different languages in it, and very strong sort of regional identities around these languages. But at the same time, in terms of across the differences, appeals to the higher level sort of national Swiss identity. And I think that actually goes to show that these two, if it's like a microcosmos of the world, so to speak, don't have to be against each other, but have more to do with how the layers of your identity are structured. And so using the example of sort of bureaucrats in Brussels, versus that tell the UK sort of what they can do with their watts versus sort of bureaucrats in DC who do, roughly speaking, the same thing but happen to belong to the same country. I think it has a lot more to do with the perceived distance to the authority and the kind of level of relationship that one has with them.
I think that's absolutely true because we have a federal system in the United States, and a lot of the Brexit forces exist down in the States in the U.S. as well, including the part of the country in which I spend most of my time. And it feels very much like the debates that we're hearing coming out of UK and other parts of Europe. Those people somewhere else are telling us what to do. But when it comes to global elites, the conversation, I think, often goes sideways in dangerous ways because people feel, that there are nefarious actors that want to take their power. And it's actually something really tragic to watch.